Hello everybody, welcome back to my channel and this deep dive series about the Pokemon in the game and the potential that they hold. I hope you've been enjoying it so far, and today we're diving into the Blastoise. Personally, my favorite starter from the Gen 1 era. Now, it is of the slumbering type, as most water types are in this game. Water's got a bit more uh, exceptions there than a few other types, but for the most part, water types are slumbering. Just like the other Kanto starters, Blastoise is an ingredient specialist with the ingredient magnet skill. Now, 2.1%, that's the same as Venusaur for skill trigger rate, but nothing really talk about there. It's an ingredient specialist. 27.5% for its ingredient proc rate. Now that is a very high number if you know anything about how ingredient proc rates are processed in the game. Now, but it is slower than the Charizard, as we discussed in the Charizard video, but same speed as the Venusaur, so it's actually getting more ingredient procs than the Venusaur is. Now, it doesn't matter too much. It doesn't make Blastoise better than Venusaur because they do two completely different jobs, as we'll get into here soon. But it's just interesting that they gave a slightly better proc rate than the Venusaur. I don't know what made them decide that, but it's got 17 inventory space, which after evolution will be 27. After ribbons, it'll be 35. Plenty of inventory space. Pretty much ingredient specialists don't really struggle with inventory that much as long as it's not like a dual stage or single stage. 3-stage mons handle inventory just fine. So, as long as you catch it at that base rate, that's a trade-off if you catch them evolved. Now, the real interesting stuff with the Blastoise, and to talk about its potential, is looking at its ingredient list. Now, Blastoise is one that there's a couple different ways to go. And first thing I will say, this C ingredient here, this sausage, is a troll ingredient. You don't want the sausage. If you see sausage on a Squirtle, it's probably not good. It's probably not good to have that. I've been kind of cursed with Squirtles. I've actually been on a long-term hunt myself. I've been struggling to find one with both good stats and not having that sausage because it just detracts. Pretty much what a Blastoise can do, you want it to either be milk, cocoa. You could also make an argument for milk, cocoa. You don't really want milk, cocoa, milk because there's not really much you can do with just a little bit of cocoa sprinkled in with the milk. But overall, you want it either being that milk producer or that cocoa producer. Now, Blastoise does have competition with Absol for producing cocoa, but the Absol in its current state, well, it's a single stage, so it's got inventory issues. It's a rare Pokemon. It requires 16 pips to fill, so it's very, very difficult to catch. And on top of all that, even with the mono ingredient list, it's pretty much equivalent between the Blastoise and the Absol if you have the milk cocoa list on the Blastoise. Absol does better at level 30 than the Blastoise does at level 30 for cocoa production, since it is being split between that milk, but the Blastoise is just so much better has such a higher ingredient rate, runs into less inventory issues. Like, I think it even has a faster speed than the Absol. So, it just makes more cocoa, all in all. Well, maybe not more, but it makes comparable amounts of cocoa. So, now the Blastoise is the only one that has solo milk for an ingredient specialist. Has a little bit of competition with Meowscarada, who has it at 30 and 60, but it's the only one that's a true mono for milk. So there's something to be said about that. But I find it's more valuable to have that cocoa. Milk, very weak ingredient. You don't really want to be using it as filler because it's only 98 for strength, which is not that much better than apples. It's the second weakest ingredient in the game, so using it as filler doesn't really work all too well, and there aren't that many good ingredients that use it. Now, something very interesting though, if you have milk and cocoa, the milk cocoa, the ABB list or the AAB list, then it can be really, really good for Dream Eater Buttercurry, especially paired with a Victory Bell or a Mr. Mime. If I go to them, I'll go to a Victory Bell because it's better. Victory Bell. If we look at the Victory Bell, it's got tomatoes and potatoes, which the Dream Eater Buttercurry takes tomatoes and potatoes, so if you get the right ingredient list on this and the right ingredient list on the Blastoise, once again, kind of how I stated with the Charizard, with the Dragonite, you can have 2 Pokemon that are covering your dish for the week. And there is something to be said about that. It makes it that your rest of your slots are easily covered by Skill Specialists or Berry Specialists. So, of course, once again, susceptible to power creep, but I think power creep's a bit too worried about in this community because it's not a competitive game. Powerful Pokemon coming in later to power creep an old option doesn't make the old option useless. It sure is stronger, but in a competitive game where the Pokemon are going head to head, the new Pokemon's presence makes the old Pokemon weaker because now that old Pokemon needs to face against that new Pokemon. In this game, what are you competing against? Time to make strength. So I think it's okay to consider these options. But that's pretty much what I have to say about the Blastoise. It is actually at more locations than the other 2 starters. Venusaur was only at Greengrass and Lapis, Charizard was only at Greengrass and Top. Now we have the Blastoise here. We got Greengrass, Cyan, and Lapis. So it's a bit more spread about. And I hope you can find a good one because it has not been my luck. So that's what's to be said about the Blastoise, and I hope you enjoyed.